Hey guys, this is Rich and Aaron with Fantasy Knuckleballers. We're here today to talk to you about some show ideas, what our schedule is going to be going forward in the off season.
We're going to try to do more shows during the off season. We'll probably try to do it once a week, but it might be every 2 or 3, depending on schedules and holidays and whatnot. We welcome questions from the listeners here. If you have anything that you want us to discuss or have questions about keepers or rankings or what your team should do, like go ahead and send them to us, and we'll probably even make a section out of that. But go ahead and send us your questions. We'll be happy to answer them. And like I said, we'll we'll have more semi-regular shows in the off season. The off season is where hot stove is, and that's really good fantasy baseball talk, in my opinion.
Well, Aaron, besides doing just our normal positional rankings and some of our draft rankings, one of the things I'm really excited about is kind of a thought experience, our thought experiment. We're going to take one team, the Cincinnati Reds, and we're going to pretend that Aaron, myself, and Justin win the $1.2 billion lotto. Out of that, we're going to take home about $700 million between the three of us. Where our personal dream is to own and run a baseball team. Well, it just so happens that our hometown team, the Cincinnati Reds, owner is in trouble because he's going through a divorce and needs an influx of cash. So we happen to buy 3% stake in the Cincinnati Reds for $255 million. Now, normally that would run 3% of the Reds would run about anywhere from about 4 to a 3% stake would run about 45 million for the Cincinnati Reds. We're going to give them an extra 200 million with the caveat that we get to run the organization, the baseball side, for 4 years. Also, there is one deal breaker with this exercise is we have a budget. We have to maintain a budget of 135 million. Last year, the Reds' budget was 129. That's what they spent. The deal breaker is that we exceed that budget at any time. We have to give back control to the ownership group. So for the next 4 years, we're going to get to run the program. We're going to be behind the scenes, making decisions about the minor leagues, making decisions about what players to go after, who do we keep, what do we do? Do we buy? Do we trade? Do we sell? Or do we keep it together? And we're going to go through all those scenarios for the Reds. And if it works out, we might do it for other teams as well.
So you want to jump into these keeper sleepers?
Sure, I'll start us off. So today, our first subject is guys that finished outside the top 50 last year in the NL in performance. But we expect these guys to have a chance to break into the top 50 or at the very least exceed expectations to be guys that help you win your league. So I'm going to start it off. Do you mind if I start first with one of my guys?
Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to start with Brenda Rogers from the Colorado Rockies. And a couple of things about him. Last year, he played in 102 games, had 15 homers, hit 282. He has one big flaw, and that flaw is, well, he has two flaws, but none of these players are perfect. He finished 118th overall, but I believe he can be a top 50 player. He has two big flaws. One of them is taking a walk. Last year, he took 19 walks, so he's kind of similar to Jeff Francoeur. He doesn't strike out a lot. He puts the ball in play, but he doesn't like to take a walk, and he never runs. He has 0 stolen bases. But let me explain why I think he can help you beat expectations. I like to look at the end of the year. I like to look at the numbers for the top 3 teams, and I take them as an average and try to figure out what my average player is going to be. In our league last year, for a winning ball club, your average player has 22 home runs, 76 runs, 71 RBIs, and 8 to 10 stolen bases. So I'm looking to plug and play a player that can get me those kind of stats. What I like about Brenda Rogers, he's going to go late. I don't know exactly right now, but I'm expecting to go ninth, 10th round, or even later in the NL draft. If you just prorate his stats from last year, you're looking at 21 home runs. You're looking at 68 runs. You're looking around 70 RBIs, and a guy that's hitting 284. When you look at that average, that's way above what it takes to win your league. Right now, baseball batting average has gotten so bad that probably about 266, 267 is going to help you finish in the top 1 or 2 in batting average. So I also believe he has a pedigree being a top 3 pick overall. He's a guy that started the season hurt, came on and finished the season strong. If you look at his last half of the season, he kept getting stronger and kept getting better. I think he's a player that I'm targeting late, like I said, maybe after the 9th round. And I think the upside with somebody like Brenda Rogers is probably 25 home runs. His first year out of the gate, when he was like 19, 20 years old, he hit 19 in A ball. And I want to say he followed up with another year of 18. He's still very young. He's only 25. He's going to be 26 next year. There's still growth potential. The one other thing that I really like about him is Colorado Rockies lineup is terrible. When you look at their lineup, he's going to bat in the top 5 position, 1 through 5. I don't know where at this point, but I can see a scenario where he overtakes McMahon, ends up batting 4th, hits 25 bombs, 90 RBIs, 80 runs, maybe gets you 2 to 3 steals because he has at least average speed. At least that's according to MLB. So why can't he run a little bit and then hit 285 to 300? If he does that, he's easily a top 25 pick, and he's a guy that you're picking up late. Aaron, what are your thoughts on Brendan Rodgers?
Well, as you know, he's probably going to be a keeper for me next year, and that's.
But I
I don't
think
know
you're
whether
going
that's
off the board. I think you're going off the board a little bit with keeping him.
Yeah, it's just I don't have a lot of great options, and I'm with you. I think he could have a great season. But looking at his stats, his career stats, the do you know how many career stolen bases he has in the majors?
I do not. Help me out.
0. He has 0 stolen bases in the majors, and he doesn't have that many more in the minors. He in 18 he stole 12 bases, but that's the high water mark for him. Um, and that's kind of disappointing. It really limits his overall potential. So I think asking for five stolen bases on the year would probably be about what you could expect. 10 would be way more than you can expect. But I'm with you. He probably could. He just maybe not a great bait stealer. Um, and I've been with you like over the years. Um, a lot of the Rocky players, obviously playing in cores gives you a huge boost, and he does have a pedigree. And so there's a lot to like with Brendan Rodgers. They've got a track record with like Todd Helton and Nolan Arenado, Trevor Story. They have a long history of like superstar offensive athletes. But over the last few years, like they've kind of hit the skids there on these young super uber prospects. David Dahl comes to mind. Like I think in was it 19 that he was supposed to be like the next big thing in Colorado, and he flamed out big time. Um, Sam Hilliard was a popular pick last year. Um, Garrett Hampson, Ryan McMahon had a nice year, but I've lowered my expectations for all of these Colorado players with Garrett Hampson and Brenda Rogers. They may have nice seasons, and to be honest with you, to me it depends on where they're being ranked come the beginning of the year. If they're ranked in the top five on like I'm talking about Hampson, McMahon, or Rogers, top five in their position in the NL, I'm out on all of them.
They're not. He's not going to be, and that's why he's such great value.
Yeah,
I think one of the things he has over those guys, when you talk about Hilliard struck out way too much in the minor leagues. He popped up because he had great power, speed, but couldn't hit the ball.
yeah,
When you look at Hampson, it was the same thing. He didn't have the hit tool. One thing that Brendan Rodgers has proved, even in the minor leagues, he can hit the ball. Now there is a possibility that he gets exposed because he doesn't ever like to take a walk, but
yeah.
he definitely has a better hit tool when you look at those guys. And I think he's been more consistent than a guy like Ryan McMahon. McMahon is kind of a guy that goes hot and cold, has a lot of power, but I really believe the hit tool, Brendan Rodgers is one of those guys that can hit 280 and above. It's just a matter of him staying healthy. That's been one of the big problems in the minor leagues for him.
I
He's been hurt.
Yeah, he has a little bit of the Nick Senzel disease. Can't stay on the field. Um, but yeah, like I said, if they're between Hampton, McMahon, and Rogers, if I can get him, I'm not saying I'm not targeting any of them, but I would if I could get them in like maybe a top 10 in each position, I'd probably try to get you know I maybe not all of them, but at least two of the three. Um, it's like they do have upside. All of them do, and Rogers probably has the most upside of the three. Um, but like I said, I'm a little less high on them than I would be in other years. But yeah, like I said, he definitely does have upside, and I think round 9 it would be a really sweet. It would be like in the sweet spot for him to be drafted.
Yeah, one of the things I really like, and then we'll move on, is when you look at shortstop, it's so deep. He can't be ranked higher than 12th, 13th in an NL only league.
Yeah,
When you're a 10 or 12 team league, I mean, after everybody has a shortstop, they're looking to fill other positions. He's going to drop because of that. And because he, honestly, if you look at his numbers, he doesn't steal bases. He was 118th last year. People always look at that without looking. If you prorate his stats, he would have had a much better year. And when I look at him, he's just the kind of guy that could really come out and have a career year, or if he doesn't, it's the ninth round pick or the 11th round pick. You can live with that.
yeah.
I'm
All
looking
right.
for upside.
Yeah, I get you.
Tell
You
me
want to
who
go
you got.
back and forth?
Yeah, you take a guy.
One guy I like, and he definitely won't be in the top 50, and he might not be in the top 100. Um, he probably won't finish the year in the top 50, but I think he'll dramatically improve his draft stock by the end of next year. That's Luis Garcia for the Nationals. He's kind of the middle infielder, shortstop, second baseman. He's got a little bit of playing time this year. He wasn't going to get a lot of playing time until um, they made the trade for Trey Turner, and then at that point when they traded Trey Turner, hey, everything everything's available to him now. He does have some really nice. He does have a pedigree like Brendan Rodgers. He will steal a few bases. He doesn't. He in the minors he didn't strike out a lot, which is, as you were pointing out, always a good thing. Um, he doesn't take a lot of walks either. He doesn't have a lot of power, but he has some stolen base potential there. So he reminds me a lot of Trey Turner coming up. I'm not saying he's going to be the next coming of Trey Turner, but he has that skill set of speed. It took Trey Turner several years to develop any power, and he's not going to he might get 10 home runs on the year. Actually, I guess he had 6 home runs this year and 236, so you might be able to expect 15 home runs. But I think stolen bases, especially if he establishes himself at the top of the order, I could see him racking up 25 stolen bases on the year if the opportunity presents itself.
All right, now I think you're on your own island here, Aaron. You're on your own island. When I look at him, he did have that breakout season. I think that was in low A ball, where he hit like 290, and then rookie ball he hit like 300, and he was 18 years old, which was young for the age.
Yeah.
And then he went to Double A and was just so. He's never had a lot of pop. I think last year was the first year he's shown pop, and you're right. He had 19 home runs. That was solid between, AAA and Major League Baseball. Um, and maybe I'm overlooking him. I need to look at it again. But he hit 242 batting average, 275 OPP, 411 slugging. Oh, I don't know that he's one of those guys that I, you know, I wouldn't have thought about. Now that you're talking about him, I'm going to relook at it.
I think if he's like I said, he's definitely not a top 100 pick, and he has to get the opportunity. I do know that Washington is going to keep Escobar that they traded for from the um, Kansas City this year. So he may not start the year with the spot, but like I say, he's already a kind of a 2022 sleeper in my opinion. So he's one of those end of the draft type of players that could add some steals. And to be honest with you, stolen bases are such a high commodity that you need to take some risk there to.
I'm not sure he's got the stolen bases in him, but the thing I do, now I'm looking at it, his BABIP was only 273 last year in the major leagues. So his batting average shows 242, but his action should be better. And he walked at a good clip. He walked at a good clip when he was at AAA. Not so much earlier in the minors, but he does have that hit tool. He doesn't strike out a lot, so he's definitely somebody to look at. You're right, and if he can hit 19 home runs and you can get him in the 14th round, that's a lot of value. And what position did he play this year?
He played some second. I think he mainly played second, but I think he might have got some games in at shortstop too.
Yeah, and I gotta believe that Washington's going to give him every opportunity. They're going to give it to the young guys.
Yeah, well, like I said, they did re-sign Escobar for next year, so
And I get that, but I think that's more of a security blanket.
yeah.
I mean, they're going to give the young guys a chance, and if they bomb, then you've got Escobar, and you got him to come and fill in if they need a defensive replacement or somebody to come in. But yeah, you make a good point. I don't know. That's a good one to look at though.
All right, so I went super deep. So give me your next one there, Rich.
Well, my next one is not that super deep, but I'm going to go with Ke'Bryan Hayes. Ke'Bryan Hayes was everybody's darling this past year. I think most people expect him to finish in the top 50 this year. I think you were really high on him at the start of the year, Aaron.
Unfortunately.
He didn't have a really good year, but it just came out recently that he was dealing with a wrist injury all season. And I think I saw something about him having a procedure on his wrist, or there was some kind of something going on to get his wrist ready for next year. One thing I really like about him though is even if you take his stats, he only played 96 games. If you took his basic stats and you put him out there at 142 games, he was 9 home runs, 13 stolen bases for a third baseman. Third baseman is one of the weakest positions in the league, and I think he had like 257. You know, you can see, um, players do not get better linear. It's not always a straight line. He could rebound easily next year, hit 15 home runs, steal 20 bases, and bat 280. And then he's easily a top 50 player, and he's going to drop. I don't know what he's going to drop to right now, but I don't see anybody reaching before, say, the 8th round. What do you think on that, Aaron?
Yeah, and you're totally right there. He's another one of my guys that um, I'm debating about keeping, but I'm probably out on keeping him. He showed so much in spring training. He came out of the gates, was hit a couple home runs in his first couple games, and then like game 2 of the year, breaks his wrist, and then proceeds to miss like the next 3, almost 4 months, I think it was, and it was so disappointing for Hayes owners. Um, there was a lot of people picking him for Rookie of the Year, and I think I picked him for the Rookie of the Year as well.
I might
And
have, yeah. I,
um,
I'm not sold on his power. I'm not sold on him being a 25 homer guy, but I don't think he has to be to give you top 50 value.
yeah, I think he can probably. I could see him if he was healthy and played the entire season. I could see 20, 25 home runs pretty easy. Um, I can see it. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. And I think he probably could hit 280 or higher as well. So like I said, I'm still high on him, but I'm with you. Like he's one of those ones that you wait for in the draft. Um, People are going to be down on him, and there's going to be a lot of people out there looking for value, and he's going to have value. So he's another one that I'm there with you. But I would really wait to see the spring and see how his wrist is adjusting from the off season and make sure that he looks healthy and he starts mashing the ball. But if he does that, yeah, like um, go ahead and do your next guy.
Okay, I want to take a couple of older folks. And one of the things I like to do is look at players that had a down season and possibly were injured or had something going on that caused their stats to drop, and then look for them to rebound the next year and get a lot of value. A couple of guys I've got like that is Michael Conforto. He finished 141. I think he's a great value. If you looked at his last, really after the All Star break, he really came on and was the same player that he was in 2020 or 2019. If you look at his numbers, like I said, he started off the season, he was terrible, had shoulder problems. He didn't really get healthy till late. If you just take August and September stats, prorate those stats out, he's back. He hasn't lost anything. He still can hit. I believe he hit 250, 257, something like that. The power's there. I really look for him to rebound. I don't think he'll go as a top 50 player. I think he's going to drop down. He's a free agent. We don't know if he's going back to the Mets or he's going to another team. But he's still young. He's under the age of 30. I look for him to rebound. He's a 30 homer bat. There's not a lot of those guys. I look for him to rebound. Another guy I really like, if he stays in the NL, is Eddie Rosario. Eddie is a player that went to the Braves. He had some good moments, but overall his season was kind of a bad one. He hit 257, had 14 home runs, so-so RBIs, so-so runs. was a below average player. But if you look at his prior seasons, he's always been a top 50 player. And I look at him as another player. When he came over to the Braves, I really felt like he was showing at the end of the season that he could be a keeper. But I think because of his season and because he's new to the NL, he's going to be one of those guys that's not going to be in the top 50. He's going to be, I don't even know if he's going to be in the top 75, but I look at him as a guy that can hit 25 home runs with a decent average, a good number of runs and RBIs. And even this year, he had a good number of steals. I believe he had double-digit steals. So I really like Eddie Rosario if he stays in the National League. I'm kind of hoping he stays with my Braves. And then my last guy is a guy that I've always been fond of. He's not a great at anything. His power might be a little suspect, but it's Eric Cosma. This year he was hurt. He had some times where he sat. His numbers were not good. He had like 12 home runs. His batting average wasn't great. His runs and RBIs, but this is a guy that consistently, if you look back the 5 years prior to that, I believe he averaged something like 90 RBIs, somewhere between 18 and 20 home runs, um, 80 80 runs, and always chipped in 3 to 5 stolen bases. I really like Eric Cosmo because he's going to fall off the map. He's a guy that I believe will go. He'll fall all the way down to probably round 13, round 15, round 16, and he's a great value pick. I look for him to rebound. He's got too much money on the books for San Diego to sit him. He makes a lot of money. He's still young enough. He's either going to be 31 or 32 this year. I I have faith in a rebound. So I really like guys that are rebounding. Those are 3 guys that I like. And a fourth one, just to throw it out there, and he's more of a value pick. He's not somebody I'm really looking at, but Jeff Mcneal. He was 193 on the player rater, didn't hit, didn't have any power, didn't do anything for the Mets. But 3 years prior, 2020, 2019, 2018, he was 300 hitter. One year he spiked 23 home runs. I'm not sure he's going to do that again, but he's a 300 hitter. I think you got to read the back of the ball card. If I'm picking really late, I'm picking round 12, 13, 14 in the NL only draft, and I got a chance to grab somebody like Jeff Mcnail, and he can bat 300 and start multiple positions. He's a good buy.
I am not a Hosmer guy, but you're right. If you could get him like super late, if all the other top 12, 15 first basemen are off the board and Hosmer is sitting there, you might get lightning in the bottle. But just because he's owed a lot of money doesn't mean that it's going to work out. Just ask the Orioles with Chris Davis. You're there.
Chris Davis couldn't hit. What I like about him
Yeah.
is, if you look at the track record, he's always been consistently between like player rater 40 to like 65. So if you can get somebody like that can get, let's say he's not as good. Let's say he's a top 60 player, and I'm picking 170. That player is going to help you win because you're getting great value.
I agree. I still like Mcneal as well. Well, and it really depends on how the Mets do their off season. They're kind of want to spend in the mode to spend a lot of money and bring in lots of quality free agents. So depending on how that shakes out, if he has a starting spot, if it looks like he has an opportunity, then yeah, I could definitely see taking a flyer on Mcneal. But it really would depend on the Mets offseason there.
The Mets would be a fun team to do. They have so much power committed. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them.
Yeah, I agree with you. Who was your other guy or two?
Yeah, I'll throw one more guy, and then I'll throw two more guys at you, and then I'll let you take over. One is and probably this is everybody's sleeper pick, but I think he'll be top three um overall catcher selected next year in the draft. So for NL only, I think it's going to be Will Smith, JT Realmuto, and I think the number three catcher is going to be Dalton Varshall.
Oh yeah,
And last year he was 163rd in the player rating. But if you look at this last 3 months and you look at what he did, I think he had something like 10 home runs, 5 stolen bases. He prorates out, and he's a guy that hit 300 in the minor leagues. So he's had the hit tool. He knows how to take a walk. He just came up to the major leagues in 2020 and didn't do, and really was terrible. And the first part of 2021, he got sit down because he couldn't hit. And
yeah.
then something clicked, and then he became a different player. But I think he hit something like 270 the last half of the year. If you just look at if he just does that for the full year, you're looking at a player with over 60 runs, 60 to 70 RBIs, 10 stolen bases, and 20 home runs as your catcher. I mean, that's a borderline top 50 player, no matter what position he's in. I think he's going to go really high, but he still could be a value.
You know, the good thing about him is he was on everybody's sleeper list last year, and I know in our drafts he actually went surprisingly high in them, and because he did so poorly, there's a chance that owners could shy away from him for fear of a repeat performance. So yeah, I could see where he could fall in the draft, but I'm not 100% sure that convinced that he'll fall in the draft, but he definitely could.
I think he'll actually go pretty high, but there could be some owners that let him slide. And my last guy that I want to talk about, and I think there'll be more talk about him as we get closer to next season, but it's Jesus Sanchez of the Miami Marlins. He came up. He was a big time prospect. He was part of the trade. I can't. Did he get? Who did he get traded from to go to the Marlins? But he was a top
He
100.
was
He
he
was
was he was a Tampa Bay Ray.
okay. He was a top 100 prospect. He really never performed at a high level until this past year in the minors as far as his numbers. But he's always been a guy that scouts loved. And he was on fire in AAA. I want to say his batting average was 330, 340 before he got the call up. And then he came up to the majors and continued doing that. Not quite at the same level. He has some swing and miss, but he had 14 home runs in about half a season with a 280 batting average. What I really like about him is I'm hoping that he'll slide, and he's a guy that you can get in the eighth, ninth round, 10th round that can hit 30 home runs, because those guys are few and far between. And he could be a guy that can go 30, 35 home runs next year with at least a league average batting average.
Well, I'll tell you right now that I'm a huge Jesus Sanchez fan, and he's probably going to be one of my keepers for next year. Um, the some of his drawbacks, I think he has the ability to steal bases. He
Agreed.
just hasn't shown the tendencies to steal bases, and that does push his value down, just like Brendan Rodgers. But I think his power is legit, and if he played a full season, I think you could look at easily 25 and maybe even push higher for home runs. And I think he hit 250 this year,
I wasn't 250. I'm sorry. Thought it
and
was a little higher.
I think he could probably um, push it up at least 20 points. I could see that pretty easily. Uh,
And one thing I like, he's only what, 22 or 23?
Yeah.
He's a
He,
young player, and one guy
he's
we didn't
24.
24. Okay, he's still a young guy. One of the things you got to love about those young guys, they have that they're still growing in their talents. So
Yeah.
when you look at his pop and um, he plays good defense, you gotta like the Marlins, and you gotta feel like they're probably going to add a player or two this offseason. I can see them going out and getting a shortstop. Um, I can see them adding a bat for sure.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree.
My last guy, and I'm sorry I keep adding guys, but
Man, you're fired.
I know my last guy, and I think I'm hoping that he drops just because coming into the season, everybody thought he was top 50 guy, and it's Dylan Carson for the St. Louis Cardinals.
You're taking all my guys now.
Yeah, I think everybody thought that he would be a top 50 guy right out the gate. He actually finished really strong. If you look at September, it really he really finished strong. He finished at number 68 after being around 100 all year on the player rating. He had 18 homers with the strong September. I think most people remember him staying a long time around 13, 14 home runs. He didn't run, even though he has a 20 stolen base season in Double A just a couple of years ago. He's still really young. I think he's only 22 years old. I'm hoping people will let him drop based on what he did last year and go for some of the more proven guys and let me take him in, say, round 7, round 8, um, in an NL only draft because uh, there is one big weakness that I see with him, and it's his K rate.
Yeah.
He struck out, I know, over 150 times in 450 at bats, and
Yep.
that's really unsustainable. But I believe,
152 and 542.
okay, I believe in his talent. So I believe he's a guy that can cut his strike rate, say, just cut it 30 Ks and add, make 10 of those hits, and you're looking at a guy that's hitting, 270, 280 with 25 home runs and 10 plus stolen bases. And then you got a superstar. You're looking at a guy in the first or second round in every draft.
Yeah, the good thing about Carlson in that situation he's in is the team itself. Okay, even though they lost to the Dodgers in that really close game, um, they have a lot of experienced uh, professionals on the team. Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, mainly those two guys. They're multiple All Stars, and you know they they provide a lot of tutelage for these younger players. And Carlson being 22, he still he in the playoff game he was hitting fifth right after Arenado, and those are hitting right behind Goldschmidt and Arenado, man. That's saying something. The team has to love you, and you have to have some promise. So I think the future's pretty bright with him. I think Arenado and Goldschmidt can, teach him how to be a professional ball player. And I think the 266 he hit this year is probably going to be a low water mark for him in his career. And he had 18 home runs, and I think he makes a lot more of those balls go over the fence next year. So yeah, I'm there with you. He's going to be another one of my keepers this year. Um, so like I said, I like the guy. He's 22. The future's pretty bright.
You're taking a lot of risks this year. You're not going with the
Yeah.
sure things for sure. But I like them. I do like your picks.
I do have a lot of draft capital. I traded a lot of players and have a lot of draft capital, and I'll probably make some off season trade, but it'll probably be later in the off season and looking to shore up my pitching. But I like Carson and Sanchez. They're risky keepers, but I'll be okay. I do have an exception with something you said about Varshall
Yeah.
being the third best catcher at the end of next year. I have two guys that's on my list that I predict will be better than him by the end of the year.
Tell me who.
The first one, it'll be, you might call it a homer pick, but I believe in the guy, Tyler Stevenson. He's
Yeah.
a high draft pick. There's a good chance that Tucker Barnhart may not be on the team next year for the
Right.
Reds, and they could just give him the starting job behind the plate um, next year. And like I said, he performed well this year, and I think the team and the fans all were really impressed. Hit 286 with 10 home runs and 350 at bats. It doesn't scream like megastar, but he had a 366 on base percentage and a 431 slugging percentage. Like he he struck out a little bit, but like I said, he also took a lot of walks, and that's probably a little bit of Joey Votto rubbing off on him.
You're right. He could finish ahead of Varsho. I mean, I will tell you my thinking on why Varsho might finish ahead of him. I really like Tyler Stevenson. I think he broke out this year, and I think he will get more playing time next year, more ABs. I guess my one concern, even though he's a huge guy, and I saw him hit a huge home run against I believe my Braves, but my worry is he's never shown great power in the minor leagues. He's always shown a great hit tool. So when does the power come? And maybe it's still to come. So maybe that's what I'm missing. And I thought the stolen bases for Varsho kind of put him, and the fact that
Yeah, you're right.
Varsho spends so much time in the outfield, he's going to get more ABs than just strictly a catcher.
Like I
But
said, Varsho does distinguish himself with the stolen bases, which is what made Reilly Muto the head and shoulders um, number one catcher for all these years. But
before you go to the next one, catcher is looking probably the best it's looked. And
oh
I don't
yeah,
know how many years? There's lots of good young catchers. So who's your
and
other guy that could beat him? I agree with you. Tyler Stevenson could end up ahead of Varsho for sure.
you could probably guess, but the Keibert Ruiz, the catcher
Okay.
that the Nationals traded for, they gave up Trey Turner and Scherzer for Ruiz, and like I said, he has been kind of a gem of the Dodgers farm system for years. And if it wasn't for all the great catchers that the Dodgers has had, like he would have already made an impact in the majors. He did, get a good 88 at bats this year, which is a pretty good a starting point for him. But he held his own, like 273 batting average. He didn't strike out a ton, 9 strikeouts and 88 at bats. Um, he walked almost as much as he struck out, but he's shown a little bit of power in the minors, and I think he has a pretty good hit tool. If he can handle the catchers, I'm sorry, the pitchers, then like I said, I think he may not be by the end of 2022 in the top three of catchers, but I would say by the end of 2023 or 2024, he will be. Like I said, he's a guy to keep your eye on. And like you said, there's a lot of good young catchers coming up. And like I said, it's a deep position. Um,
A lot deeper than it ever has been. I like Keeper Ruiz, but I guess my concern is just that he's a rookie. I mean, if you look back at just this past year, if we looked at Dalton Varsho, he was supposed to come up and do good. He really struggled early. If you look at Key Brian Hayes, your guy, he really struggled his rookie year. You need Dylan Carlson, who was supposed to come out blazing, and everybody thought he was going to be 280 and 2020 guy. He struggled a little bit until he got going. I think, especially with a young catcher, his first priority is defense and working with the pitching staff.
yeah,
that could hurt him at least his first year or two in the league. But I
It seems like
definitely see him as a great prospect.
catchers always takes another 2 or 3 years longer to develop than your average position player. So, like I said, it might be another year or so for Ruiz, but like I said, I I wouldn't have. I don't think his skill set next year will hurt you. So the problem with catchers is that you have to watch who you take because you don't want a guy that's going to be hitting 200 and pulling down your batting average. You don't want. He may not be able to get a lot of home runs or stolen bases or stats like that, but you don't want him to pull down um, your stats like your average. So Ruiz, I think, has a pretty good hit tool. So with Stevenson, I think they will definitely be a plus to your batting average, and they're definitely catchers you can take a chance on, and they definitely won't hurt your team. And I think if things play out the way they appear, they probably be a bonus to your team. So that's kind of why I like him. But I'm all on board with Dylan Carson. I love the kid. Same with Jesus Sanchez. But I'll take another one of Carlson's teammates, a guy that came on in the latter half of the season and just started mashing, is Harrison Bader. He's not a typical guy that I would be keen on, but like I said, he did mash the ball over the last half of the season. He finished with 16 home runs, and he's pulled it. He's had his best average as a major leaguer of his career, 267. Um, he he strikes out a little bit, but it's not a ton. He walks a little bit, but like I said, he really started to shine there at the last 6-8 weeks of the season, and he was a key cog in them winning. What was it, 20 games in a row?
Yes, yes, yeah,
Reds,
yeah. You're right.
being a Reds fan, like I freaking hated every second of it, but he was a key cog part of that, and like I say, if the Cardinals can get production like that out of him the entire season, like you will have a hidden gem there for next
I
year.
agree. And he was hurt a lot he was hurt a good portion of the year. So that
Yeah,
kind of affected him too. I agree. If he can maintain that and do it for 145 to 150 games, he's a keeper. And he plays with a lot of flair. I like watching him play defense. I love to see him run. He seems to bring extra energy to the game. I guess my worry or my concern with Harrison Bader is, did he really make the improvements to keep that average up? Because that's always been the struggle. Is he's been a low average guy, 220, 230 hitter. If he's truly made the changes, and I think, baseball savant, and we'll have a bunch more people that are more educated than us that'll dig deep into it. But if he's truly a 260 hitter, then he definitely is a keeper. He was one of the guys I looked at when I was thinking about doing it. I just didn't trust the average.
yeah, yeah. And like I said, at some point you think he'd snap out of that, and like I said, I think he's worthy of a eighth, ninth round pick next year. Like I said, a lot of people are worried about the average, and like I said, he definitely has some power, and if you can uh, if you can swing a 260, 265 average out of him, I think you'll take it with his power.
Oh, definitely. If he does that, I think you're right on. And he stays healthy, he's a keeper because he definitely has power and he definitely has a lot of speed. And he's gonna play.
Yeah.
Defense plays.
And another one of the guys I like to bring up for next year is one of your guys, and I think you're trying to trade him, which I wouldn't be surprised. But it's CJ Crone, first baseman for the Rockies. Um,
Right.
I I thought he was going to do well this year, and granted he was hurt. He was hurt for a little bit, but he still managed to get 470 at bats. Um, he's been known for just having a little bit of power, and his average has never really been much. But I think the biggest place you saw the improvement in CJ Crone was his average this year. Like he pulled it up from a career 260 to a 281 average this year, and a 375 on base percentage. That is a professional, stat line there. 28 home runs to go along with that. Um, he is 31. They've already signed an extension with him for next year, so all the mystery is out as far as if he's going to come back or not. But to me, um, he's definitely a top 10 first baseman in the National League, and I'm not putting him in the top five, but he's probably six or seven, depending on off-season moves here. I really like him, and like I said, he doesn't have the name as a lot of the other first basemen, but he will quietly get stats that you need to win the league.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's underrated. He was one of those guys that I had as a sleeper last year, so that's why I targeted him. And I think I took him in round. It was either round 12 or round 13, just for that very fact because he's got that's hit 30 home runs with Minnesota. He had a terrible 2020 season. He got hurt, played like 13, 14 games. He had a 28 home run season and a 30 home run season. He's going to Colorado. They didn't have a first baseman. I'm with you. It helped him with his batting average. He's never going to give you some speed. He's got a job for the next 2 years. He's going to be their starting first baseman. I guess my biggest uh, reason that I'm not a big fan is I'm not a big fan of keeping or drafting first baseman high. It's just from a strategy standpoint. I feel like there's always a first baseman out there late. You got people like Josh Bell. You've got Jesus Aguilar, who got hurt last year, or otherwise he might be in this conversation. You've got what's the guy from the Phillies, Reese Hoskins. He got hurt
Yeah,
before he got hurt. He was on pace for like 35 home runs. Seems like there's always somebody late that you can get and plug them in at first base and get 20, 25 home runs with great counting stats. I do think, just from a straight performance standpoint, he's a keeper. Um, and who knows? I could keep him, but you know, just my personal strategy is I'm not high on keeping first base.
I understand that. But like I said, I wasn't necessarily either, and I wasn't in last year during the draft. I wasn't very high on first baseman either, and I ended up taking a first baseman late, and I think that really cost me during the our keeper league season. But um,
Really, I disagree. You picked up Jose Aguilar, correct?
yeah,
You
he did
know,
all right, I guess.
till he got hurt, he was a top 50 player, and
Yeah,
then he stayed hurt, and that might have cost you. But you know, you picked him up super late. If I remember right, it was 13th or 14th round, 8th or ninth round, because I took Ryan McMahon just so you couldn't get him. And
yeah,
then you took Jesus Aguilar, who I really had ranked higher than Ryan McMahon. So it worked out.
yeah, it did. It. I'll give you that. I'll throw in one pitcher because I don't think either one of us has thrown in a pitcher. And this is one of my guys, and here again, this is probably somebody I'm gonna keep next year. Is Ranger Suarez, Phillies pitcher. he did his best Tom Glavine, I guess. He put a Tom Glavine career, a Tom Glavine career in a single season. He started off being a dynamite closer and really, managing that bullpen of the Phillies, who they started off the year with a crappy bullpen like they did it last year. And he came in and provided some stability at the end of that bullpen and got the Phillies back on a winning track. And just based on injuries and everything else, they shifted him over a course of several weeks to the rotation. And I really didn't have high expectations on how that was going to work out for him. But to my surprise, he was every bit, if not more, dynamic as a starter than he was as a reliever. So I'm very impressed with him, and I'm sure they have big plans for him next year as a starter. And like I said, he might be under an innings limit just based on all the time he didn't start the year. He started the year injured, and he spent a lot of time in the bullpen, so he didn't have a lot of innings under his belt this year. So he might cap out at 140, 150 innings next year, but he's definitely a guy that could be an asset there in your pitching staff.
I agree with you, Aaron. I guess my only take on it is there's so many really good pitchers. If
I
you
don't
look
know.
at it, you can easily go 20 deep or 22 to 25 deep of guys that you would want on your roster that you're willing to keep that all could finish in that top 15 or 10. He's one of those guys. I just think there's other guys out there that you can get, like a Freddie Peralta or Joe Musgrove or Charlie Morton. That
They will probably all be in the top 50, but
well, I agree.
Suarez, I don't think will be.
I agree. I don't think Suarez will. I'm not sure Charlie Morton will. I think there's some ageism that
Yeah,
causes him to drop. But I agree, probably for the very reason you just mentioned, because he didn't start all year and he didn't have a lot of innings. But I do see him as somebody that can outperform where you're going to get him if you were to pick him in a draft.
yeah.
So, my only thought, just from a keeper standpoint, if I was you, is just think about innings. You know, is he going to be somebody that can get you 150 innings, though? Though I picked him really late, Freddie Peralta, who only got me 140 innings, but he got me like 196 strikeouts.
Yeah, he was.
Microscopic whip, he was dominant. So if he can duplicate what he did this year, yeah, he's that guy. And I
Yeah,
definitely think he definitely looks like a guy that's going to perform at a high level. There's so many good pitchers.
I
That's
don't
all.
like. You could probably get a lot of disagreement that over the course of the league there. There's so many pitchers that were on your team, which is why you won it. The rest of us struggled quite a bit. The last guy I want to bring up is another one that a middle infielder that doesn't have a lot of pop but has quite a bit of speed. That because especially in National League only teams or only leagues, he doesn't have a lot of National League experience. He might be somebody that a lot of people overlooks because his season ended so prematurely, and that's Nick Madrigal, the middle infielder that the Cubs got from the White Sox in the midseason trade there. Um, he is a high average player. So one thing that I've been guilty of over the years is drafting a lot of guys. I historically I've been a person that don't really pay a lot of attention to batting average. I usually focus on some of the counting stats like home runs and stolen bases and RBIs, and not so much with batting average. but he's a consistent high average batter and can get you plenty of a good batting average. And over the last few years, he's actually stolen quite a bit of bases as well. So I think on a good season, if the Cubs will choose to run him, I think he could probably pick you up 20 stolen bases pretty easy, and also get you a 300 average or 300 plus average. He does not strike out a lot, which is really, really great. He usually walks more than he strikes out, which is a rare find. And playing in the friendly confines there, I think he has a really good year next year. He's coming off of a hamstring surgery. He's expected back by March 1st, so there keep an eye on him during spring training. You see, make sure he's recovered and is on track to playing. But assuming he's a-okay come opening day, like I think he's going to be a top 50 player by the end of the year for sure, assuming he stays healthy.
I like him. I think he's a better baseball player than fantasy baseball player. Um, Here's my biggest concern is two. One is power. I mean, he's had almost no. If he throws 3 home runs for you, and he's your starting second baseman, you've got to make that up somewhere else, and that's a lot of home runs. Now he's going to score runs. He's going to be a plus plus in scoring runs. I agree with you. He's going to be a plus. I think he can hit 302, but he could hit 280, or he could hit 290, and I don't know if that makes up for that 3 home runs. Now, if he comes out and hits 10, that's a different story. Then my other concern with him coming off a hamstring injury, how much is he going to run? So that would scare me from the stolen base standpoint, because for him to give you top 50 value, he's going to have to bat like 310, 320, and still 20, 25 bags.
Keep in mind the whole topic here is these players are drafting out of the top 50. So I'm not
No,
saying
I'm with you. I'm with you. I think if you're looking at value, he's a guy that probably will not go very high. I don't see him going high.
Oh yeah, I don't think he will either, but I think he'll have a really good year and potentially be a top 50 by the end of the year.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. If you're looking at somebody that's going to go past round 10, I don't see anybody picking him up before say at least round 10, because nobody really
Exactly.
knows much about him.
And
He
that's what
got
and
hurt.
because especially if you're in a national league, he spent all of his time in the White Sox. He came over and he was hurt when he came over, so he didn't get any time there in with the Cubs. So especially if you're in a national league only league, like a lot of people, there's no history there, and like I say, he could turn a lot of heads there by mid year next year. So yeah, it's definitely somebody you target later, and like I said, I think there's a lot of benefit there to taking him.
And you make a good point too. You got to think about draft strategy. So if you've taken some low average guys with a lot of power early, or you don't have a lot of speed and you've got some low average guys, he's a great guy to kind of balance things out. So I think he's one of those picks that you look at and you have to evaluate your roster and say, okay, I need somebody to boost my average and boost my stolen bases. Nick
Yeah,
Madrigal could be your guy.
I think like in our league where there's 5 keepers, I think he's a double-digit draft pick, and I think he'll be one of the top 5 or 10 players drafted after pick 100, in my opinion.
I could see that, and at that point, you're yeah, I could see him going later than that. To be honest with you, Aaron, but I'm with you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you make a good point. It's great value pick. He
And I
is a
think
guy to kind of look at.
he could really potentially fall even further if the hamstrings isn't isn't quite ready at the beginning of spring training. And if he misses a few weeks of spring training and puts him behind, a lot of people are going to look at that and just kind of, move him down even further. But like I said, he's going to get playing time with what the Cubs did last year. You don't know what their off season is going to be, but I think there's going to be the opportunity there for him to play and get a lot of at bats. So, like I said, I would draft with confidence.
I agree with what you said. I guess, and I think a lot of people might overlook him like me because I'm looking for more. I usually look for guys that have more power. I'm looking for a guy that can hit 20 plus home runs so I can finish top three in home runs. But I think where you're picking, you're right. You're picking a late pick.
So I think that's what you should do in most drafts is, especially early on, pick, your power guys, your power pitchers with a lot of strikeouts, and your power bats with a lot of home runs. You might mix in a couple stolen base guys, closers, depending on the draft. But I think in most drafts, you focus power early and often. And like I said, if then it gives you the opportunity to, like, in round 11, 12, 13, to, find those Nick Madrigals and target them. And, they're kind of the glue that keeps your team together and keeps your team at the top.
You make a good point. He could be a better version of Ramil Tapia for the
Yeah,
Rockies. Who was he a keeper in 2020? I think he was pretty close to it. He batted 300 and
yeah,
had some stolen bases, but he's a better version for sure.
yeah. He was another one of those guys that, like, um, everybody was high on, and um, I guess he didn't finish the year too badly, but he didn't, in my opinion, he didn't perform as well as everybody was thinking he was going to at the beginning of the year. So yeah, I think he was a fantasy disappointment.
I agree.
All right, you have anybody else you want to bring up?
No, I think I've talked enough for tonight.
Yeah. Um, there are some other guys, depending on, I'll just kind of throw out some names. Um, no, but some other guys this one's kind of depending on where he lands. John Gray would be an interesting pitcher next year.
Oh,
A
good,
free
good
agent.
choice. He's
Um,
definitely going to be one of those guys I'm looking at.
if he lands someplace like San Francisco or
New
someplace like
York.
that, New Mets, yeah, like his value goes up way a ton. I like Jose Barrero too. He uh, young shortstop for the Reds. Um, Cal Farmer's got the shortstop job, but I think Barrero actually takes the leap next year and starts putting it together. It's just
If
he's
he
super.
doesn't end up being their starting center fielder, I think he could end up in center field.
Yeah,
But
we'll talk about that when we do
yeah,
uh,
when we
the
talk about the Reds,
GM.
but I agree. He hit like 913 OPS last year in A and AAA.
Yeah.
I definitely got him on my radar.
And I think the last player I'll throw out, and um, I think you and I, Rich, agree that this guy is going to go in the top 50 for sure. But I think his draft stock is going to improve by the end of next year so much that I kind of want to at least mention him. It's Austin Riley. He had a huge breakout this year, and I don't think I don't think he's reached the peak of his potential. I think there's another step, another gear he can take next year in his maturity. Like I said, I have, I think the sky's the limits for that kid, and um, he's on a good team, and like I said, there's a lot of reasons to get excited if you're a Braves fan. So, like I said, I think he's a guy to target too. He will be in the top 50, but
I agree. As somebody that watches a lot of Braves game, I wish I would have picked him last year because he went late.
yeah,
I think his next gear is I think he can be a 40 home run guy.
yeah, I'm thinking almost like I'm not going Chipper Jones, but I he could be just shy of that level.
He's young. He's got to prove that he can maintain that average. But
Yeah,
it looks like he made a lot of changes, and the big knock on him. Everybody said he had a slider speed bat and he couldn't hit a good fastball, but he hit a lot of them this year, so he made some changes.
yep. All right. With that being said, thanks for watching, everyone. We mentioned at the beginning of the show about emailing us for ideas. If you have questions or things you want us to discuss, you can email us at mvp@fantasyknuckleballers.com. Our site is going to be updated here in the off season. We'll update that with all of our rankings and whatnot. But it's fantasyknuckleballers.com, and our Twitter feed at fknuckleballers. Check us out. Like I said, leave us feedback in the comments, like us, send us messages. We'll take all of them to heart. Tell us what we did well, what we did good. Tell us you like the show, you hate the show. Just give us some feedback, and we appreciate it all. So, on behalf of Rich, Justin, and I, thank you guys, and look for us here and for our next show.